When I was a little girl, my mother would, I would see these girls standing on the corners late at night when we would come back from basketball practice, and I would ask her, why are they standing on the corners? And my mom would say, they just, they can't get a ride home, or that they're waiting on transportation. And so I had no idea that girls were actually being, trafficked. Or I knew about prostitution. I just didn't understand it. I thought that there was a huge difference versus prostitution and trafficking.
What did you think the difference was at the time?
Prostitution is for girls like us, like girls like me. Like kids in the city, we're prostitutes. Kids that are trafficked are the ones that come from overseas. That's trafficking. We feel like ours is by choice and theirs is by force. That's how I felt being young.
Welcome back to the Trafficking Free America podcast. This podcast is about educating the public about modern-day human trafficking, how it occurs, how victims are groomed, how trafficking is hidden behind the reality of prostitution. We educate so that we can do a better job at prevention. We also use this podcast to discuss human trafficking and the work being done to prevent it, how others are fighting this, how our country is not fighting this, and collaborating to find strategies to make North America a trafficking-free zone. In today's episode, we continue with Oree's story. I want to warn you, this episode is designated for mature audiences. We have censored some of the language, but the subject is very strong. I would not recommend listening to this with children in the room or around you, but I would listen to this if you are a parent. I would encourage you to listen to this, not to be entertained, but for you to better understand this issue. Naturally, I want to share a trigger warning for the following content. If you might not be able to listen to this episode, we do share some educational tips in the episode's description. In our last episode, we met Oree. She shared with us the life she had growing up, how she was a victim of sexual abuse, sexual violence, and heavy bullying. Let's get into the episode. To catch us up, Oree just shared with us that she ran away from home. She escaped to a friend's house after learning that her mother was not taking quicker action to remove a man from her home that had previously molested Oree. This eventually led her to a house that was owned by and run by a pimp, a trafficker.
So we first were getting dressed at her house, and I used to have these ponytails in my hair that literally would have ballies, like these barrettes and stuff. And so she was like, take those out of your hair. And so she took them out. She brushed my hair back into a ponytail, to make me look older, put on mascara, change my clothes, but I still had my underwear and stuff on. And so I remember just the whole process of trying to make me less kiddish. And so when we went to go hang out with these guys, the guy ended up taking us to this dope spot. And in the dope spot basically was this male and this woman, and he was like, oh, we'll be right back, like her and the guy would be right back. They never came back for me. There was this guy, and he was sitting on the couch. It just was a bad place. I could still remember the room physically, this small little apartment in the back of these buildings. And now I know the aroma that was in the house was, crack. It was dope. And so there was a woman in the kitchen, and she was obviously, somebody on drugs. And at the table, he had a gun on the table, he had weed on the table, he had other drugs. So I sat there and I was talking to him, and within 30 seconds, I told this man my whole life story, He was like, why you out so late? Where your mama and them at? Why you hanging out with them? You young. And I just told him everything. Told him how I found I was adopted, told him how I was sexually abused, all this stuff. And it's just, he just it just makes me really angry because there's still men out there like that are predators, just predator. He didn't have to come looking for me like most traffickers go and find girls to recruit girls. Like, I fell right on his doorstep, and it's just like thinking about how the way he talked to me that day, like how he was trying to act so sweet, and that he would be like a father figure and so nurturing, and just like, it really makes me angry, because it's still men like that, you know, that sell you a dream that ain't gonna never happen, honestly. And so I sat on that couch, and he like, you ain't gotta never go back there. You know, you'll be safe here. I got straps, I got guns, all this stuff. And so then he like, I'm gonna go to the store real quick, I'll be back. And so I had to use the restroom, so I walked to the back of this, literally this 1-bedroom apartment that was so small. And in this room, there was this beautiful woman. And so when I say that, it's like, kids nowadays get drawn to that. It's the same thing on the Instagram. It's the same thing on social media. Looking at girls that are pretty, that are beautiful, that have all the stuff you don't have or that you desire. And so when I went in this back of the room, she had this big closet stuff with all these clothes, a massive TV they had in the room, big old stereo bars, like stereo bars for sound. She was sitting on this bed. She had long curly hair, and she was like, you know, biracial, and like she had her head down though, like she was like sitting crisscross and like had her head down. So I did think that was weird a little bit, but I spoke to her when I came in. I was like, hi, and she didn't speak to me, so I'm like, all right, you ain't gotta say nothing to me. Little did I know she was just following the rules of her daddy, which we call pimps. What we call pimps. We don't call them a pimp. Like, oh, that's my pimp. We call them folks, you know, or daddy, or, you know, other names or something like that. And so she didn't say nothing. I went into the bathroom, and then when I came out, you know, I was in the bathroom and stuff. And so when I came back, JB was there. And when he came back, he had this little plastic black bag tied up. And I guess he had like clothes in it. Like he had some plaid shorts that were like striped. All these different colors. I'll never forget, like brown, green, and white. And there was these black bamboo sandals with the thong sandals. And a thong in there. And he was like, you know, you should clean up and stuff, because I know that you probably been in your clothes all day. I had never had a father in my life. You know, my mom ran my bath and would bathe me, but I also took a lot of baths alone. Like, you know, with her not being in the room. And so I remember being in the tub, and I was really insecure about my body. I was going through puberty. So I remember like hiding my body. Like, that's the one detailed memory I remember. I was in this tub hiding my body in this dope spot. And he walked up, he came in, and he like picked up the towel and started bathing me. And he was like, it's okay, like you don't have to be afraid like of your body. Your body is beautiful. Your body is what, you know, people desire this body, like men desire this body, this stuff. And it was just the way he was talking to me, and I get so angry because I get angry with 11-year-old Oree. Like, how the did you not know that this man was a weirdo? Like, it makes me angry. It makes me really angry. Like, I had so much sexual trauma already happening to me. This 30-something-year-old man was bathing me, and I didn't see nothing wrong with it, because it was normal already. Men touching me, men raping me, men making me do things to them were normal already by the time I was 11 years old. So sex was normal at 11 years old, when you really think about that. And how I identified sex was sex with love. Like, you have sex with someone in order to make them love you. Like, that's how I identified it as a young age, which has now been a problem as an adult, when I've done things in my past life because I felt like an object. I didn't have sex because it was the right thing, because I was married and things like that, right? Because I really wanted to. I did it out of obligation because it was a job. And so when I got out the tub, I had my clothes on, and now she was ready to talk to me.
She is the woman Oree encountered when she went into the bathroom, the woman who ignored her.
I had no idea this was my grooming process, that, you know, it showed that he was going to be protective over me, and he'll stand up for me, and he made her talk to me and all this stuff, right? That's the grooming process for kids. How you groom somebody into trusting you even in an instant like that. You know, and so when she was talking to me, she was like, I didn't mean to be in your business, but when you were talking to JB, I've been through so much in my life too. Like, my stepfather raped me my whole childhood. That's how I ran away to California. I came out here, girl, when I was 15, like, you know. And so what happened in that moment? Connection. there was somebody like me. I never heard another person say that they had been sexually abused or that somebody took advantage of me. So that was an instant connection. You know, she had everything I wanted, so maybe I can be like her, whatever that was. And so she described her job, right? Like, oh, I'm getting ready. She would start getting dressed, and she was dressed in all these nice clothes, and it was a little provocative. And so, you know, that kind of was weird for me. But I was like, where are you going? She was like, oh, I'm going to work. And I'm like, work? Well, where do you work at? You know, like, I really didn't know about strip clubs neither. I didn't know about that kind of stuff when I was a kid. So she was like, oh, like, I'm an escort. And I'm like, an escort? What's that? And she was like, well, I just assist men on dates. Like, I go, I show them a good time. I just have conversation. I talk with them, you know, make them feel good, and they pay me. And I'm like, pay you? And she was like, yeah, like, I'd rather get paid for it than do it for free. And so, click, something clicks in my head, right? Because the first time somebody ever sexually abused me is 5 years old. The first time somebody ever sexually assaults me is 9 years old. I might as well make money for it. Like, right, the wheels start spinning a little bit. Oh, it's not harmful. Sometimes you don't even have to do nothing with them. You just talk to them, make them feel good. Sometimes just give them a blow. You know, she didn't go into details, but it was very specific of like, girl, I just make them have a good time. And so then I'm like, but what do you mean by good time? And so when she was like, well, sometimes, you know, the conversation will go to dinner, or sometimes, you know, it's very fast and quick. I'll get in the car, talk to them, you know, make them feel good. You know, I might give them a hand job. That's nothing, girl. I can make $100 with a hand job. $100, you 11. And I was like, a hand job? You mean like, yes, like jacking them off? Yeah. And literally, I remember saying on my mouth, that's hoeing. Like, that's prostitution. Like, oh no, I don't want to do that. And she was like, well, that's not how you should look at it. You already been doing it for free. You over here liking guys and doing all that, right? So it's that immediate response. She's like, it's not like that. Trust me. Like, we're like a family here. It's like a family union. JB ain't gonna never let nothing happen to you. Everything is regulated. All the prices are set, right? So my grooming process started. And so it seems and it sounds easy. But then it's just normal. Because I already been sexually abused. A man already made him have oral sex with me. A guy already didn't raped me before, you know, like I've already started. Like, honestly, after I started being sexually abused, I was already having sex at 11. I already had sex with 2 guys. One was an older teenager, and the other boy was a teenager too. Like, I was already having sex. So it was like, you already having sex with boys, you might as well do it for free. So that's a huge piece. Because I was already sexually active, she just tied it into like, you might as well get paid for it, and nobody ever take advantage of you again. And now you got JB, so can't nobody take advantage of you.
As you heard in the last episode, Oree was always confronted as if she was the problem. Very few asked her what was wrong. Very few inquired, which led her to think that very few cared. Oree was in a place where all she needed to hear was the right thing. It didn't matter who was saying it. So now she's at a trafficker's house, being told that she could make something of herself as a prostitute. She wasn't outright accepting it, but she was seeming to start to listen.
So it sounds good at 11. I got protection. I got somewhere to live. I got somewhere that someone's going to feed me. And I got people that's going to love me. It just sounds really stupid. Like, I guess I'm getting really emotional because I wish that if I was like Oree right now, I would have ran in that house and got that little girl up out of there, you know? Like, you are loved beyond measure, and you don't even know that. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not love. Like, if I could tell kids anything, like, that is not love. Like, it's not love. Like, anybody asking you to give up your body because you're not gaining something from it. You think you're gaining a financial gain when one, it doesn't even go to your hand. But you're not gaining anything from it. You actually losing a lot of yourself. Like, you every time you lay down, you dying each time. You becoming more numb to something. And so at 11, when this woman, like, it's just making me so angry because I just wish like I could just be like, what the f- were you doing? Like, you know, like, I'm getting mad, you know?
While we were recording her story, we took a quick break from the interview. Oree just wanted to collect herself. She told this story probably 100 times throughout the years. It's her passion to tell her story and to educate. She shares how important it is for survivors to speak to their story. But that never makes it easy. I asked for the audio and camera to be cut, but she asked if we could keep rolling.
I was just thinking right now, like, man, if I could just talk to other survivors about, like, man, we get out the life, like, even though we don't be with traffickers, we get with these guys, man, that don't love us, you know, like, and it just break my heart because, like, can't nobody ever love you the way that God loves me, you know, like, I can't even explain that, man, like, even as a kid, I was just searching for this love. Like, I just wish that somebody would have just hugged me, you know what I'm saying? Like, just hug me and just never let me go. And I think about the kids I work with that we think are the tough ones that are screaming and yelling, and man, they just need somebody to hug them and just never let them go. Like, man, like, I was in search for love. It was like, I'm getting so mad because one thing, even though I had a family, it was like, people are like, well, I had a family. You had a family. It was like, what is enough? And it was just like, I wanted people to see what was going on with me, to just be like, I love you as you are, you know, like, I love you right where you are. And this has happened to you, and I'm not going to give up on you. You know what I'm saying? And so in that moment, all I could think about is that being with this woman and this guy, I felt protected. I felt like I was seen. It was the first time, you know, at 11 years old, somebody asked me what happened to me. Was I okay? The first time, you know, I had coaches, I had teachers, I had counselor, and everybody else pointed the finger at me versus like what happened to you? Like, what's going on? And so it was the wrong person. It was a trafficker that was the one that would give me the wrong information and persuade me and just be cunning, just sneaky and just deceptive. Like, you know, because you think it's going to be one way. And so that night in that room, you know, she was telling me about this stuff, and I'm like, you know, at first I'm defensive, right? But that's like in any conversation, even me as an adult, you get defensive, and then you like, okay, I can see your point a little bit. Might as well get paid for it, and it doesn't take that long. You can make $150 in literally 10 minutes. And so we end up going out there. He was like, you know, we're going to take her out there. And so I'm sitting in the back of this car, right? He got a BMW. That's the number one thing with kids, too. Somebody got money. He flashy, you know, and the way she dressed. And I was just like, okay, like, I'm riding the BMW. My mama got an old school Chevy that got paint chipping off of it with hardly any air that we have to keep filling up. So it's a new lifestyle. And so I'm sitting in the back of the car. And she starts telling me about how much she works, and she bought this car. So nobody rides in the front seat but her. This is creating order, that she's the bottom, excuse my French, everyone. She's the bottom bitch, and that's her position. And so she runs and regulates things, basically. That's what I didn't know. On this ride to the track where kids are being bought and sold, like, this was the process of teaching you the rules of the game. And so she started talking about, you don't look at people, you don't look at any other man that's out there, any other pimp. When you talk to dates, you do this, you do this. But I'm like, you know, in the backseat, I'm like, okay. But you like, you know, I'm 11 years old. I'm like, okay, there's a lot of information, you know, but why are you telling me this stuff? And so she, you know, she's just talking it through. And so then she got out the car. I watched her get out. We pulled up to a local track. She got out. She got in his car. And then, of course, how the same way the enemy does is that he create division. So he like, jump in the front seat. So it's like, no. She said, I can't get in the front seat. I don't give a what she talking about. Get your butt in the front seat. You can sit in the front seat. So now you feel special. He'll protect me.
I'm curious as to what you're picturing. Pimp in a fancy car, clearly being the one in control. Sweet-talking Oree as if he's a close uncle. I doubt you probably picture him in a purple suit, top hat, cane, fur coat. You know, the Hollywood version of a pimp stereotype that you see depicted on TV or in the movies.
Like how people think of a pimp in their head, they picture this man with this robe on, with this cane, and it's like, no, they really be smooth. Like they really tell you things about yourself that feel good. They really tell you about things that you think is the truth. Pimps come in all forms. So if you're in the ghetto, of course you're gonna get maybe primarily Hispanic and African American impoverished areas, right? Because those are the more marginalized. If you are in Orange County of California, you're gonna get a Caucasian male that's trafficking. I have friends that were with Caucasian traffickers who made a lot of money. I have friends who are with Asian traffickers who made a lot of money. So when you go into different areas, the trafficking looks different. Some of them look like businessmen. Some of them are, we call them CEO pimps, like the ones who may work got contracts with the clubs in order to recruit girls like that. Or people, I had a trafficker for a brief moment that literally ran a business, literally ran like a video kind of production thing that knew so many artists, so many rappers and stuff. And so he ran his business, but he still had girls that when, the artists would come in town and stuff, he like, hey, I got some women and some girls that could come. So it all looks different. It's not one particular, it just depends on the economic status, where it is, environment, geographically. The traffickers you meet in, Vegas are not going to be the traffickers that you meet in Utah, but they're there. And even traffickers are women, they're men, all races, all different forms of backgrounds. But the number one thing too, people don't talk about family, familial trafficking. Oh, it's happening. You might not have a CEO pimp in Utah, but you might got a mama that's trafficking her kid. You might have a daddy who's selling her kid, You might have an uncle that's molesting the kids and selling them, And so it just looks different. It's all the same thing though. So it's hidden in plain sight. I walked into a store the other day. I was sitting at a restaurant, and it was this guy, cleaned up, real nice, was with this young girl. Immediately, I knew immediately, like, you are not on a date with her for one. You ain't buying sex from her. So what you trying to show her in this atmosphere? Because how she dressed right now, this don't fit the atmosphere. And of course, I was coming from church, so I look like a Cole's mama that got on a Cole's dress. I look like a straight mama that day. Like some little church lady. I ain't gonna lie. And she's in a high class area like this, dressed like that. Nah, something not right.
Oree's insert here is to help us understand how we can catch things in the open. Her normal response in those situations is to tell the server or manager to keep an ear open. Just warn others around the area to make sure that if there is something that becomes evident, we can all catch it.
I want people to understand, the trafficker is not the person that recruits. They send another individual that is already being trafficked to recruit someone. It does not work like that. She's not gonna hear straight from me as a pimp. She's gonna hear from someone who is a young girl or a woman or a male, another boy that can tell you, and that's what I've seen too, even in gangs, how gang traffics young boys and stuff, like, oh, you could do this for the hood, blah, blah, blah. But then, the older guy that might have went to prison or just certain things is using these young boys and making them go out and make money. So it looks differently, but it's never, a majority of the time, the trafficker don't automatically approach. It happens with more adults sometimes, the guy will, but with kids, no. They send other people that can manipulate them, deceive them, and groom them and kind of like just grow their trust.
At the U.S. Institute Against Human Trafficking, we're always being asked to share the exact signs that someone can look for. It's a fair question, but as you heard from Oree, it's not always black and white. Catching the signs of someone being trafficked is the hardest thing to see, but catching signs of someone being groomed is often a lot easier to see. We'll be right back after this break.
If you're listening to this podcast, you probably have a passion to end human trafficking. But even though you're passionate about it, you're not sure where to begin. Well, we can help you with that. The reality is that human trafficking, and specifically sex trafficking, can only thrive if there's a demand. The demand of buyers purchasing sex or watching pornography that traffickers and pimps produce. After a survey, 4 out of 5 buyers shared that they would not purchase sex if they knew that there was a much better chance of being caught or exposed. So how do we help scare buyers away? It takes education. Education around the community to understand how grooming of sex trafficking occurs, learning how men, women, boys, and girls are being purchased, and what signs to look out for to possibly stop this crime from happening. If the entire community, such as individuals, businesses, schools, and churches, were to become better educated around how sex trafficking and sex buying occurs, we could greatly hurt the industry of sex trafficking. The U.S. Institute Against Human Trafficking has a program to help you learn and be aware of how this is occurring in the community. It's called the Trafficking Free Zone. The Trafficking Free Zone is a certification that you receive by watching our free online course that educates you about modern-day trafficking and how you can help stop it. You can access this program on our website, usiaht.org/traffickingfreezone. Encourage your business, church, school, community, or maybe just some friends and family to take this free online course and become a certified Trafficking Free Zone member today. Go to usiaht.org/traffickingfreezone. Again, that's usiaht.org/traffickingfreezone.
So I got invited to the front seat, and he started telling me about the game. You know, like, you see all these hoes out here, like, they all ain't got no instruction. And that's how you get broke. That's how that's how you can get beat up. You need to be under instruction, you know? You need protection. They all out here loose and like, so it was talking about someone else in order to validate what was good between me and him. You know, I love my hoes, like, I love each and every one of them. You know, I take care of them. I make sure they well groomed. I ain't gonna never make sure that you don't look good, that you don't smell good, hair, nails done, all this stuff. You ain't gonna never have to worry about that. We building a team together. This is what we're doing. We're building a home together. We're building a family together. My goal is to get us up out of this little bitty apartment and get us into a space where, you know, you can have your own room. You know, I'll show you how to drive. I'll teach all this stuff, right? Like, you know, touching me and rubbing my head, doing all these nurturing things. And so when she got to the car, she was really mad. Cause she was like, what the fuck is she doing in my front seat? He like, man, she's like, man, shut your ass up and get your ass in the back seat. So what does that tell me? In that moment, right? Somebody's gonna protect me. Oh, he liked me more, of course, because you wanted somebody to desire. Told her to take me with him and teach me. Like, basically, like, you run a show, right? So get your ass out the car and show her what she need to do. And I remember it was just like this terrified look on her face. Like, just terrified because she knew what was getting ready to happen. And so I start crying because I'm like, wait, what? You just told me that I'm not going to have to work. And she was like, JB, I don't think we thinking this through, you know? Like, the one time out here, like, it's, you know, it's not really, you know, and it was just back and forth conversation. And I was just crying, and all I can remember is being in that front seat like, what did I do? It's my fault. It's my fault. I did this. I got myself here.
So you knew in that moment.
At this part of the interview, I began to question Oree. I wondered, why didn't you yell, scream, let others know that you're an 11-year-old being told to do this? I wasn't trying to be insensitive. I know I would have likely been too scared to do that myself, much less an 11-year-old girl. But it's what a lot of us wonder and think. I'm sure she thinks the same now. But the reality is that it wouldn't have done any good in this situation.
I was just like, yeah, like, in the moment, I'm 11, this is a man, he got a gun, and like, in that moment, I was just crying. Like, I was crying. I was crying. I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, no, I don't want to do that. And then he, like, grabbed me. He snatched me up. He hit me. No, like, it was just like a, like, shut the fuck up. Like, one of them, pow, like, slapped me. Like, I can't even, you know. And then he, like, literally just, like, snatched me up, like, grabbed me by my hair. Like, and I remember feeling like a kid, like a really small child. Like, when he dragged me out the car, it was like, man, get up. Like, you crying for it. You done been through too much in your life to be crying about some shit like this. Like, having somebody to talk to you like that. And he was just dragging me like, you ain't got no fucking home. Your mama putting locks in the windows. Don't nobody want your ass. Like, you know, you might as well stay here. Like, in hearing that, it was like everything I had told him that night, he used it against me. He flipped it against me.
He caught her. He learned everything he needed to know about how to convince her that this is all that she was worth. It was only 2 minutes ago that Oree felt safe. That's how quickly this turned.
And so a part of me is like, I remember like just screaming and being like, and all the girls that were out there didn't even do nothing because they scared. So they immediately put their head down because they don't want to be out of pocket, which is like breaking, making eye contact and stuff. And so they can get beat by their pimps if they take a look at JB or in a situation, like their pimp will get out the car and be like, what the you looking at, bitch? Like, turn around. Mind your business. Like, like it's ruthless out there like that. And so when he was dragging me, I remember like, he grabbed me up and he was just like, all the shit that happened to you, you still want to like, this is a better way. Like, I got you. You understand? Like, this ain't gonna be nothing. This is gonna be easy. And a part of you is crazy because a person don't even have to beat you to death to traffic you. It was literally like, I already know how to do this. I know what that's like. I know how to be numb. It sounds very bad. It sounds very vulgar. Like, no, you would be traumatized. Like, most victims become traumatized. Most people, what we've known historically, stay in situations because it becomes their normal. And I remember her like walking up, and I think that was the moment when I said, I know how to do this, was when she said, you better grow the fuck up out here, like, get you killed. Like, baby, you're not gonna survive out here like this. Like, every feeling you had about anything, like, I need you to suppress it or you will die. Do you understand? Like, when we get in this car with this trick, with this guy, he can kill us. Green like Volkswagen. And this guy, like, I could just tell he was just got off work. Like, he had a collar shirt on. Like, he was like, hey, baby, how are you feeling tonight? Like, and you have to, like, be nice and sexy and submissive in a way. And, like, you can't be strong at all. And that's a huge part of my life. Like, it was like I got bullied, and then my identity is stripped, and then now I'm being trafficked, and then now I have to submit again, like lower who I am and my own power, like, you know what I'm saying, in order to give you what you want. And so I remember getting there, and it was just like I probably turned like 14 dates that night. So at 11 I had sex with 14 men.
The stigma of how our society seems to portray sex, specifically how society portrays a woman's desire or how a man should treat her, it's wrong. To think that any human being should have any type of power to do this to any other person, let alone a child. You could defend these buyers who might say they didn't know her age. If Oree was any other age, would that really make a difference? Trafficking is slavery. Slavery might be started by a trafficker, but the trafficker has no business doing this work without buyers. And it's sick.
It was like that night something died in me. Like, it was just like, I got myself here. Well, my auntie used to call me fast. Everybody used to call me a fast little girl. Well, hey, they said all I'm gonna ever be able to do is lay on my back. Might as well get paid for it. And so we riding in that car, leaving, the sun coming up, and then you walk into a McDonald's, And I remember just this look of disgust on people's face, and nobody said nothing to me. Like, they know what you're doing, They know where you coming from. And nobody would say nothing. Like, how did you not see this little bitty girl with hardly anything on? Like, look like I've been up all night for hours. Nothing. Like, how did you not say anything?
This is hard to hear. It makes me wonder to myself, have I missed this before? I truly believe we'd all do something in this situation. But when you're not looking, when you're not thinking about how this happens in really any community we live in, you're not prone to notice. The reasons we share these stories is to know what is happening. Oree's story is, and I'm sad to say, a common story. Unfortunately, this is very, very normal. Oree was trafficked about 10 to 15 years ago. Most all of it works the same way, but more solicitation is done online now. We hear stories from survivors that were trafficked a decade ago, but we're still trying to catch up on the creativity from buyers and sellers that are happening today. In our next episode, we'll hear how Oree's life went after she was trafficked. To give you some hope, her story does end well. She does find restoration, but it was not an easy road to get there. We'll learn how Oree was able to leave this life and then become an abolitionist in the movement to end human trafficking. How she began educating, mentoring, and speaking to us to provide more awareness so that the next little girl, little boy, man or woman, is not in the same situation of feeling that this is their worth. This is the Trafficking Free America podcast. Until next time.